All right, everyone, welcome to our fly tying meeting. Today is the 2nd of March, and we are tying the Walt's worm here at the Roanoke Salem New River Valley Project Healing Waters program. My name is Brandon Wells. I am here behind this zoomed in fly, and I have my hook and the vise for the Walt's worm. We have a nice agenda tonight. We have a few speakers. We have some people who are going to be muted against their will, as perhaps their background music comes flooding into our video here. That's all right, I can handle that part. And then we're going to have Bob Crawshaw share kind of his journey through the military, and followed that by Bob's contributions and hopefully benefits of healing waters. Our newly appointed program lead will then speak on the fly we're tying tonight, which is the Walt's worm. And then I'll get to tying it after all those people have had their part. We do have a special guest, Rosie, who will be briefly speaking about our guest of honor. And I'll spotlight her screen shortly so she can speak more on that. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Mark Colwell. He's going to talk briefly about a little project that he kind of has up his sleeve, and hopefully we can get some traction for it. So Mark, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Brandon. So we don't actually have any a date set for this yet, but we're trying to work on a stream restoration project for one of our volunteers who, as I understand it, was one of our original volunteers for this chapter. And kind of gotten back into the swing of things. And he's got just an immaculate piece of property up on Bent Mountain on Bottom Creek. And he's got, I think, about a mile worth of creek frontage. But anyway, he regularly stocks it. And it just because it's in the woods, obviously, it's had some trees down in it and some flooding has come through. And Bob's actually been up there several times helping him to show where to stock and whatnot, what would be best. But anyway, he was inquiring to see if we would be interested in getting a small group together and heading up to his place, probably in the next month or two. Number one, when it warms up, obviously, but number two, probably more importantly, when everything opens up related to COVID and we're able to do such things. So we're probably looking here in the next, I know we just started March, so we're probably looking, probably talking about some time like in April, maybe end of April, May timeframe. But, maybe getting I'm guessing is depending on the COVID restrictions, as many people as that will allow. But, obviously what would be involved would be just manual labor, really. So, just moving some trees, not trees, but branches, and doing all kinds of moving some earth here and there. But anyway, it'd be a really help to the landowner who's getting it ready to have people from our group come up to fish, which he's done in the past. But it also would be very helpful for our members to see. It's a very good educational experience on top of helping him out, because you get to see why fish would be where they would be, why they would want to hold in certain places, why, how the current and seams work, and how we're going to move the stream, move items in the stream around to make the stream conform to where the fish would like it. And I'm sure, Bob would be involved with that, and to explain, or Fred, and explaining exactly why that would be. So anyway, I know I don't have a date for you, but if anybody wants to keep that in mind, if you think you might be interested in that, it would probably be just like a day project, maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday, just to go up there for a couple hours and help out however you can.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
It's probably going to be a few months, because we'll be moving into phase 2, which is one volunteer and one veteran fishing. And
okay.
It's going to be a few months before we can meet as a group.
Well, you guys heard it. So a few months. So you obviously have some time to think about it, but we'll give, when we get actual details about it, we'll give you more details. But if you want to start thinking about that, whoever will be interested, I guess just let me know. I guess I can put my info in the comment section, or how does that work, Brandon?
I will be sure to put them in touch with you, Mark, as if anybody wants to put in the chat there, I'll forward it on to Mark.
Okay. All right. We'll do it. I appreciate it, Brandon.
Appreciate it. All right, Mark, your spotlight has now been removed, sir. Rosie, I'm going to give you your very well-deserved moment in the sun here, so we can talk about the little fella you have who's watching from over there, where you are. Go ahead, Rosie. It's all yours.
Well, he was sent to Kathy Mueller by the Project Healing Waters Willoughby program, and he was sent with a letter, and the letter says, "My name is Righty Tightlines, but you can call me RT. I'm a member of the Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing Willoughby program team, and I'm here to take a little vacation. While I visit, please take pictures of me doing some core program activities with you. I've forgotten what they are, but here's if you've forgotten what they are, here's a reminder: fly tying, rod building, casting, education, and outings." So obviously, we're just going to be able to do fly tying with him, but Kathy and I have taken him on one outing. So so he's going to be tying the fly tonight. So this is RT.
All right. Thank you, Rosie. All right. We're bringing it back here. All right. So the next order of business is Bob Crawshaw has offered to share not only his bio for how he got to where he is in the military and what it did for him, but to also share briefly, what Healing Waters has done for him as well and what he's brought to Healing Waters. So, sir, without any further ado, I'm going to put you on the spot, give you the full screen, and allow you to take over briefly.
Well, I'm in trouble right now because my best friend and fishing buddy, Ron Bennett, is here, and so I can't embellish at all. I'd like to talk about four things: how I started fly fishing, my Navy career very briefly, and how I got into the corporate world, and finally Project Healing Waters. Now, I was born in central Pennsylvania, very close to Penn State University. And from my hometown, you could throw a stone in any direction and hit a trout stream. 6 Mile Run, Black Machana, Mosquito Creek, Spring Creek, Laurel Fork. I mean, they were all over. The furthest trout stream from my house was a 12-mile bike ride.
Did a minute ago.
Can you hear me?
Pinkish hue out there that is just.
We had someone speaking out of turn there, sir. My apologies.
So I started fly fishing at 11, and at 13 I started tying flies, and I didn't start. I had been tying flies for 2 years, and I started selling flies to Bill's Sporting Goods store downtown in my hometown, the only sporting goods store there was, and for 25 cents. And I thought I was on my way to my first million. And my senior year, in my high school years, I'm not sure which year it was, I guided 2 men from Chicago on Black Machana Creek, and they paid me $20 each. So I thought I was on my way to $2 million, my second million. Then I graduated from high school in 1964, penniless, and went to the Naval Academy, graduated in 1968, barely, and joined and became a naval officer in the surface warfare community. I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but for the next 30 years, all of my sea duty, all of it, was associated with a ship class called destroyers. And you don't know what that is, some of you don't, but they're small combatant ships, 300 to 420 or so sailors, designed multi-mission. They hunt submarines, they attack surface combatants, they can shoot down bombers and missiles, and they help the Marines with naval gunfire support. And I served on 11 destroyers in 30 years. I had command of USS Mahan in Charleston, South Carolina, a guided missile destroyer. And my last at sea command was a squadron commander, Desron 26, Destroyer Squadron 26. And I had 6 to 8 ships, depending on the weather and where I was. SEAL teams, Coast Guard, legal detachments. It was just so much fun. And I had the Red Sea. And in the last couple of years of my active duty, I was ashore, and I had an engineering facility in Dam Neck. And my old buddy, Ron Bennett, who's online here, and I decided to start a fly fishing business. So we did. It was called Fly Fishing Virginia, LLC. And we figured we were on our way to my third million, right? It never happened. Big difference between gross and net. And we did that for, I don't know, Ron, 4 or 5 years.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, but we got some great gear, didn't we? Oh, come on.
That's nice
We got
people.
some great gear.
Yeah.
and we met a lot of nice folks. And but I decided anyway, and I think Rod did too, that we weren't going to make a job after retirement from the Navy. So I went to industry for 8 years, and I realized capitalism was well worth defending. And in 2007, I retired to Salem, Virginia. And I volunteered for everything under the sun. And the veterans online here can relate to this, but you don't serve your country for the food. You don't serve it for the pay. And you certainly don't serve it for the travel. You serve it because you want to serve a greater good. And so I had this big hole in my heart, having retired from 30 years, and I wanted to serve the greater good. And I volunteered for everything under the sun. I taught junior achievement from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in 5 different elementary schools in the Roanoke area. I had 2 little brothers. I did a marketing plan for the rideshare program and the Smartway bus that you all see at the park and rides. I did a marketing plan for them and sold it to Carillion, Lewis Gale, Shenandoah, and the VA. And I volunteered for Project Healing Waters. I received a call in 2008, a year after, actually a little more than a year after I retired, from Ed Nicholson, the founder of Project Healing Waters. And he asked me if I would find some corporate sponsors for the first national fundraiser called the Mossy Creek Invitational. Some of you, maybe many of you, don't know what that is, but there's a stretch of Mossy Creek that belongs to Bob Fitch, who is the CEO of British Aerospace North America. He owns a beautiful stretch of Mossy Creek, one of the trophy trout streams in the state. And his neighbor upstream is, I think, an orthopedic surgeon from Virginia Beach, doctor anyway, and he gave his property as well. And the Amish family above that donated their property as well. So we had almost 2.5 miles of water, and we had the riverbound guy stock it with really nice fish. And my task was to find corporate sponsors for the teams. The idea was we would have 14 teams. Each vet would have a guide assigned, and they would do beats in the morning, different beats in the afternoon, next day, different beats, next afternoon, different beats. And the one with the most inches of fish would win, and the corporate sponsor had to pony up his promised share. So we ended up making over $1 million on the first one, 2008, April 23rd. And then 2009, we did the same thing. In 2010, we did the same thing. And we brought in a lot of money. In between those times, I was guiding with very directed guides. When Project Healing Waters started, there were 3 programs in the nation. One was Walter Reed Hospital. The second was Fort Belvoir, and which was a warrior transition unit where they went through occupational therapy before they went back into the community. And the third program was Salem VA Medical Center. And the reason for that is that Bob Cox, who was a disabled vet, started the PTSD program here in Salem, and it was world renowned for 16 years. He treated German soldiers, Canadian soldiers. It was just a special program. And so those I guided specifically for individuals that were coming out of the Warrior Transition Unit or out of Walter Reed. Each one had an aide that knew how to handle the prosthesis and the drugs that were required during the day. It was just a remarkable experience. As long as I live, I will never forget my first vet in Project Healing Waters in that very first Mossy Creek Invitational. It convinced me that all those other volunteer efforts I was doing, serving a greater good, were secondary to Project Healing Waters. And I went on in 2013. From 2010 on, I guided locally on the ponds at the VA, helped guys fly fish. The inpatients would come out on a bus and we'd fish, catch a lot of big largemouth bass. And I would do this directed guides out of Fort Belvoir and the hospital. And around 20, we went through Josh, Chris, David, and lastly Mike Muse as the program lead here locally. And Mike and I managed to establish Sportsman's Warehouse on the second deck, and that was our very first fly tying session. Was up there on that. When you walk in, there's a balcony that surrounds the building, and we were up there. It had a table, you could seat about 10 people, and we quickly outgrew that and ended up at the DAV. That's how we got started. And then Mike left, and Jake Blizzard said, "Can I do this? Can he do that?" He wanted to be the PL. And then he called me and said, "Can you help me? Because I can't do the computer." And I said, "Sure, I'll help you." So we set out a plan for finding water. And incidentally, the first water we found was Scott Barrier's place up on Bent Mountain, which Mark Colwell just described. We walked in there without any forewarning, found him cutting hay, and said, "Here's what we do." And he said, "Well, I'll put trout in this pond and I'll put a dock in for you, a wheelchair dock." And so we wanted to find water. We wanted to find disabled vets. So Jake Blizzard became the hall monitor at the VA Medical Center, trolled the hallways every day, finding vets to bring in to participate. And volunteers, Trout Unlimited, responded tremendously. And lastly, money. We went after money, and we were quite successful getting some money. Around 2014, I actually in 2013, on a Back Creek guided trip, I had a small meeting with a guide that was failing, and I became quite vocal with him. And unfortunately, Johnson heard me and said, "Okay, put together a guide program." So I did. And in the spring of 2014, I gave my first guide seminar up in Harrisonburg to about 25 people or so. And since then, I've had 253 volunteers attend my guide seminar. 7 of them were professional guides. I think Fred even attended. And so we covered a lot of water, metaphorically, in getting the volunteers ready to guide disabled vets. Uh, then in late 2014, I had a female vet, Navy, with brain cancer. I was guiding her, and about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I realized she needed a woman to talk to, and my hair was definitely not long enough. So I said, I've got to find women vets or women volunteers, and enter Kathy Mueller and Rosie Fox. And Penny, is it Penny? Yeah, it was Penny. And there was a fourth lady, I can't remember. And I actually gave a seminar in the picnic shelter at Green Hill Park. And Rosie and Kathy probably regretted what they signed up for, because they suddenly found themselves guiding other women, veterans from all over the state. But it was very vital, very vital. So, so here we are. I've done this 12 years. I had to quit a year ago for personal reasons, but along the way, you know, I think I've helped a lot of vets, and I've taught a lot of folks how to tie flies and how to fly fish, and I taught a lot of guides, and foremost, I taught them to lie with aplomb and embellish every fish they ever caught. And I've helped many, help them heal with the solitude and serenity of this sport. And I've met a lot of true patriots. I think that the future of our country is on their shoulders. And I met new friends and fishing buddies. And while I may have enriched others in the last 12 years, I've been enriched personally tenfold. It's been a great run. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Did I lie, Ron?
No, not at all, sir.
I think a round of applause for Bob Crawshaw.
Oh, stop.
That was fantastic, sir. I sincerely appreciate it. Following that, I would like to move on to Fred, who is going to briefly introduce our fly while I get the vise all set up here. I'm going to switch over to my camera, and Fred, if you don't mind, just chatting in the background while we get everybody on to the vise, that would be great.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob, and thank you everyone for being here. Walt's worm was developed, he originated in 1984, and pretty much it was a sinker with a hook. In Spring Creek, the water was cold and high, and he tied this fly as a necessity. The unnamed fly fished really well. It took notice, and eventually it made it in a spot at Fly Fisher's Paradise, hence the Walt's worm. Some later called it a water worm-like or crane fly, larva-like fly, and so it just kind of stuck as that, but really it was a number 10 hook with a bunch of lead and some hare's ear mask for dubbing, and that caught fish. A little about Walt. Walt worked at Fly Fisher's Paradise for a spell. I think it was about 8 years. He was also a 6-year Pennsylvania State fly tie-in champion in a row, as well as a multi-year New Jersey State champion. He was truly a professional and presentation grade fly tyer and an excellent fisherman. The marvel about the Walt's worm is it does not lose the interest of the fly fisherman or fly tyer, but it keeps the interest of the trout. It's simple and effective. It makes this fly a gold standard in my fly box. Presentation always trumps pattern, and it's just a wonderful fly to fish. Simple, you could tie a bunch before you go. You don't have to spend a lot of time tying the different materials. You just effectively get them in your box and go out and fish them. I use a few key materials for this fly. One is Jig Superbs, Hanox, H450s, BLs, barbless. They would make an excellent fly for this. I also use slotted beaded heads. They have a little slot on the backside, so they ride and invert the fly, so you have less snags. I always use a real large, 25 thousandths lead, 6, 7 wraps, 8 more if you need to. And then a lot of times I'll use a simple Nature Spirit Harris mask, natural number 48. And one thing I do with my dubbing is I cut a little hole in the bottom corner, and that's where I pull my material from. It's better than reaching in the top of the Ziploc bag, and you can tie quicker and more effectively by doing that. To give you an idea of what some of mine look like, they're ready for my box. But just simple bead heads with one dubbing, and that's about it. Nice, simple, effective flies. But as far as fishing them, wherever the trout are, a good drift gets you some fish. So, and that's about all I have with the Walt's worm.
Hey, that's perfect, Fred. Thank you so much.
Are you ready, Brandon?
Yeah, we're going to throw it down now. I've tied in my bead. Now, I don't have the jig hook like Fred was referring to. Kathy sent out just a nymph hook, and again, that's perfectly fine. There's an optional bead, which I've thrown on there because, like Fred said, we want this thing to get down as fast as possible in the column. If you weren't on earlier, I will be tying one of these Walt's worms, and then I will switch over to a jigged hook that I have just in my own personal flat tying materials. And we'll tie a jigged hook in a size 12, and we'll just see the difference. And I'll be tying the sexy Walt, which is just kind of a jazzed up version, a little bit of flash, a little bit of a hot spot, different thread color, but still a very simple fly to tie a bunch of and get into your box. So I'm going to throw some lead wraps on here now and snug those real tight to the bead. We had an idea from one of our members to fill some of this dead space when I'm tying with a little featured section of the show called, I've self-titled it, Fish It or Ditch It. So Fish It or Ditch It is my attempt to have everyone share, if they have such content, items that they have either purchased and absolutely never been without, or items that they've purchased and then immediately regretted upon hitting the water. And so what I wanted to do was open the floor to anyone that has found a product that they just have to have on their vest at all times, and conversely, a product that they bought, fell for the marketing, and immediately disposed of upon getting home that afternoon. So everyone's been asked to unmute, mute at will, and share. I'm happy to start it off with a product that I don't leave home without, and that is my Simplify chest rig. It's in my truck right now, but it's a company called Simplify, and they make a very user-friendly chest rig that has magnets and everything is right here. It's a hexagonal shaped chest rig. I've had really good luck with it. It's held up very well. It's very kind of simplistic, and I don't leave home without it. It is my go-to rig now for fly fishing. So just I'll throw that out there as my go-to chest rig.
I have one that's very simple and is a rubber band on your fly vest.
Okay.
And I use that rubber band for, you'll take your dry fly and you hook it on the end of your, put it on with a little, hold your tippet and hold it on that rubber band, and then pluck that rubber band like a banjo, and that'll dry CDC faster than anything out there. So if you have a dry fly that you want just caught a fish with and you want to dry it, hook it on the rubber band, play it with a banjo, and they'll dry that fly faster than any fly dope or anything else that's out there.
That is
That's
fantastic.
Oh, geez.
Look at that. Perfect. It's
It's a
already
simple
working.
heavy duty rubber band.
Nice.
You
Thank
could market that, Fred.
Yes.
I've gone through a lot of back braces, and for those that are looking for something that really is good, it's called Coolback, Koolbak. It's the best back brace I've ever had.
There we go. Thank you, sir. All right, I've run my thread back to the bend there. And now we're going to dub on some of that hare's ear mask, the dubbing that was supplied. We're going for a carrot shape. That's the kind of best I can describe the end result of this fly's body. So the dubbing noodle is going to be fairly tight, and you want it pretty sparse. What I've found is the thicker the dubbing, the slower it sinks. And so you want a pretty slim profile. It'll really help it get down. And so my dubbing noodle is pretty sparse here, and I'm going to run it forward now. Little extra there to build up my head here. Again, going for that tapered carrot shape. And that's it. That is quite literally the end of Walt's worm. Now, there are many variations. There are many ways to spice this fly up, which I'll be demonstrating here shortly. There's a version that has some ribbing mixed in. There's a version that has the flash mixed in, which I'll be demonstrating here shortly. But there really is not much more to this fly. So this is definitely a fly that you can practice on. You can really perfect your technique with dubbing, whip finishing, and come away with a fly that's both effective and quick to stock the box with. All right, I'm gonna drop that one out. I'm gonna put in the jig here now, the jig hook, and we're gonna see what we can come away with as far as a little bit more of a flashy version, a little bit of a hot spot, different thread color, the whole nine here. So bear with me, I'll get the bead on here. I don't have, oh yeah, you know what? I think I do have a slotted bead. Look at that. So I have a slotted bead here, and I'll be able to run this up the shank and see if we can get a little bit of our sexy Walt going here next. So the slot in the bead allows that bead to sit real close to the hook eye. You can just barely see that slot there thanks to this macro. But it allows the bead to flex on the jig and kind of ride down that hook shank all the way to the eye of the hook, which is nice. All right, I'm going to follow this up with another 6 or 7 wraps of lead. There was one of our tires tonight that I wanted to really draw attention to. He had a great angle. It's Tom Fink. Tom, your view is very nice to see there as you tie along with us. I applaud your attempts to include us in your tying station there. All right, so I've got my lead there snugged up against the bead, and now I'll start the thread. Again, I've changed colors on the thread this time. I'm going to go with an orange because I'm going to build a hot spot into the end of this fly. So start my thread right behind the lead there and build up a little thread dam so that my lead doesn't move too much. RT, your fly is also looking fantastic. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to run this thread back now to the bend. And so now we're going to tie in the optional ribbing. What I've chosen for the ribbing tonight, there's a lot of choices out there, many choices. Kathy included some brassy type wire, so I'll use that. Appreciate that, Kathy. But there, you can also use, a tinsel, some type of mylar to give this fly a little bit of flash as you work your way forward, wrapping that wire forward. I'm going to tie in this wire now. And let it hang off the back. And you're going to leave your thread hanging right there at the bend. All right, a little bit more of that dubbing that Kathy sent along. If you don't have the fly tying kits at home and you want them, please reach out to myself, Kathy, Fred. Any of us will go through the process of getting all your information, getting you listed in our computer system, and then getting these materials headed your way. Even if that means you need a vise, you need any of the tools, we're happy to send that along once we get you in our system. And then you can be right there with us on these Tuesdays, tying along at home. So please don't hesitate. If you've been waiting, wondering, there's no reason not to. We have it. We want you to have it. It's not doing anybody any good in our storage unit. All right, I'm going to start wrapping this dubbing forward. Looking for that nice carrot shape, as they say. I'm gonna add a little bit more here at the front. I want to leave room for my hot spot, however, or the dog collar, I've heard it referred to, right behind the bead when I whip finish. We're going to build up some nice color with this orange thread. It looks like a carrot, sort of. And now I'm going to follow up with my wraps of wire. As we've seen here in the past, best practice is to counter wrap your dubbing with your wire. So my dubbing was wrapped away from me. Therefore, I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to wrap towards myself with that to lay down real nice on my dubbing. This assists with durability and also makes you look like you really know what you're talking about. All right, I'm going to capture that wire. A few good wraps. And now this is done. All right, so now the dog collar. So the dog collar is going to be that hot spot that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to do a few wraps of color here right up next to the bead. Give those fish something to really key onto. And then we will follow that with a whip and be done with this fly as well. And again, this fly will ride something like this when in the water column, thanks to that bead hanging nice and low and the jig hook facing the water surface. That is our Walt's worm for today. Questions, comments, concerns? Let's hear them. Type them in. Speak your piece if you'd like. And I otherwise have nothing else for the good of the group.
Brandon, that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Is it the hook that makes it ride upside down, or is it the bead?
The design of the hook, Joy, has that little jig. So it has that 45-degree angle.
So that's what makes it ride. Okay.
That really changes how the hook rides in the water.
Okay. Okay.
And as Fred said, it kind of serves double duty. It'll reduce your snags, obviously.
Yeah.
And it'll also hit the fish in the top of the mouth, which assists with setting the hook.
Of course,
Right.
Brandon doesn't need a specific hook for that. He can, by his skill alone, he can make the fly ride whatever way he wants to, right, Brandon?
That's correct. I actually cut off the entire hook when I fish and just use the fly itself. But yeah, it's fun to mess around with kind of how it rides, and I think it would be fun to rig up a tandem rig with these and just experiment throughout the day what you see being more successful. I think it would be a neat little experiment to run. Go ahead, Mark.
And maybe back to Fred. So were you saying as far as time of year, is this something that could kind of work just about any time, or is there a time that's better?
The Walt's worm is the first fly that goes on anytime I fish subsurface. So I mean, it's buggy enough to represent just about any nymph, anything floating by. So if you present it properly, it catches fish. It's so simple to tie. All the time I work, I never really have time to sit down and tie flies. So I could tie a dozen of these in 30 minutes and they go in my box, and I fish them more than I fish the other flies that take longer for me to tie. So it's just simple presentation always beats pattern to me.
Nice.
You only have dubbing, some lead, a bead head, and a hook. It's as simple as it gets.
Amen.